Before the legions conquered the known world, before the eagle standards glittered over conquered cities, Rome had to master something more primal: chaos. To control the wild fury of battle, the Romans turned to a weapon of muscle and instinct, a creature bred not for companionship, but for conquest. They called it the canis pugnax, the combative dog. Massive, fearless, and disciplined, these war dogs were living engines of terror. They marched beside soldiers, guarded camps, and tore through enemy lines with a force that could turn a stalemate into slaughter. But their story did not begin in Rome. The Romans, pragmatic as ever, rarely invented from scratch. They perfected what others began. When they conquered Greece, they didn't just carry home marble statues and stolen scrolls. Among the spoils of war came something alive, something with teeth. From a Greek region known as Auris came the Maloians, enormous hounds bred to guard livestock and fend off bandits. These dogs were already the stuff of legend, their size and ferocity unmatched. The Romans saw in them not just animals, but potential. They began to breed these Greek giants with their own Italian mastiffs, a cross designed to create the ultimate war beast, strong, enduring, and unflinching in the face of chaos. The result was the canis pugnax, a creature of bone-crushing jaws and cold discipline. Within a generation, Rome had forged its first true canine soldier. To the Romans, the breeding of these dogs was as meticulous as the crafting of swords. Litters were tracked by legion officers. Records were kept as carefully as for javelins and armor. Puppies born on state land were considered state property, soldiers in waiting. Training began almost as soon as their eyes opened. Forget affection or companionship. These animals were trained for obedience, endurance, and controlled aggression. By 8 weeks, drills had already begun. Their handlers, often seasoned soldiers themselves, taught them to respond to a complex code of whistles and hand signals: advance, hold, release. Commands that had to be obeyed instantly, even amid the deafening clash of iron and screams of war. Punishments and rewards shaped every behavior. While ancient sources are vague, modern reconstructions suggest that handlers used food deprivation, strict discipline, and ritual feeding to instill focus. Some accounts even mention training with goat blood. Whether true or not, the image captures the brutal efficiency of Rome's methods. By 6 months, the dogs were conditioned athletes. They could march for 20 miles beside a legionary column, muscles rippling beneath thick hides, ears twitching to the rhythm of shields and footsteps. Every motion mirrored discipline. No wasted energy, no hesitation. Unlike cavalry horses kept in separate stables, Canis pugnaces lived with the troops. Each dog shared a tent line, sleeping beside soldiers who became their pack. This constant contact allowed them to recognize their comrades by scent alone. Leather armor, Roman wool, and the sweat of discipline. This scent training was crucial. It ensured that, in the chaos of battle, the dogs never turned on allies. A Roman war dog could tell a legionary's musk from that of a Gaul or Iberian fighter at 50 paces. It was instinct weaponized. When night fell, these same beasts became sentinels. 1 dog per century, roughly 100 men, patrolled the camp perimeter. Their senses were keener than any human watchman's. A low growl was the first and final warning. Ignore it, and an intruder would meet a blur of fur and fangs aimed straight for the femoral artery. It was a precise, lethal form of security, a deterrent no thief or spy could ignore. Roman pragmatism extended even to canine armor. A typical canis pugnax wore a heavy leather collar studded with bronze spikes, both as protection and weapon. These spikes could shred flesh and guard the throat, the most vulnerable target in a fight. Some dogs went into battle wearing light armor, larica canina, if you will. A set of roughly 40 small bronze plates laced with raw hide across the chest and shoulders. It wasn't full protection, but it amplified their terrifying presence. Imagine it, a snarling mastiff, eyes blazing beneath a glinting chest plate, sprinting across the battlefield. The armor weighed about as much as a Roman toddler, but tests by modern reenactors show that even encumbered, a fit mastiff retained around 70% of its top speed. To an enemy, that was fast enough to end a life. Some later chroniclers speak of even more elaborate gear, spiked anklets or fire-bearing harnesses, though such accounts likely mix fact and legend. But even without embellishment, a spiked and armored war dog was a sight to freeze the blood. The Canis pugnaces were not thrown into every fight. They were weapons of shock and strategy. When terrain or tactics demanded chaos, the Romans unleashed them. Picture northern Italy, 197 BCE. The Orian hillmen, fierce, unyielding, have formed a tight phalanx on a narrow road. Roman cavalry cannot flank them, and the infantry risk slaughter in a frontal charge. The commander gives a signal. From behind the front lines, handlers release 20 armored dogs. They surge forward, bronze glinting, snarls tearing the air. The impact is devastating. The hillman's shield wall splinters as the dogs crash into it, biting, clawing, dragging men down by throats and calves. Panic spreads like wildfire. Behind them, Roman cavalry charges, exploiting the breach. Within minutes, the enemy line collapses. This was no accident. The dogs were a psychological weapon. A moving storm of noise and fear. Horses panicked at their scent. Untrained troops broke ranks at their sight. The Romans didn't just rely on brute force. They used terror as a tool. In Gaul and Aquitania, the dogs were deployed to break cavalry charges. Trained to strike at the horse's face or nose, even a single bite could send a mount rearing in agony, scattering riders before they could level their spears. In Sardinia, 231 BCE, the consul Marcus Pomponius Matho used dogs to hunt down guerrilla fighters hiding in caves and forests, terrain too dangerous for soldiers. These dogs could follow scent trails days old, rooting out enemies no human could find. They weren't just killers, they were trackers, scouts, and sentinels. Among the more chilling legends are those of the Pyrrhacanes, dogs trained to carry small pots of burning oil or pitch strapped to their backs. According to scattered references, handlers would light the wicks and send the dogs charging into enemy lines or wooden defenses. The pots would shatter on impact, splashing fire and chaos across men and horses alike. Whether these accounts are exaggerations or rare experiments, they speak to the Roman willingness to innovate with horror. Ancient writers called it the stink that routs men, a phrase that suggests both literal flame and psychological dread. Few creatures could survive such missions. These dogs were martyrs of war, sacrificed to ignite victory. Despite their ferocity, the kind's pugnaces were not mindless beasts. Their power lay in control. They attacked only on command, held their position amid chaos, and ceased at a whistle. To a Roman, this obedience was divine, a reflection of the order that made Rome invincible. Handlers lived and often died with their dogs. The bond was born of shared hardship, not affection, but it ran deep. Each dog learned its handler's scent, voice, and gestures. A single whistle could summon them from the din of battle, bloodied but alive. Not all dogs met the same fate. The best were reserved for frontline assaults. Others guarded supply trains or served as hunting companions. Those that failed training might end up as camp guards. Still useful, still valued. When the camps settled and torches dimmed, the war dogs took their most sacred duty, the night watch. Each century had its assigned guardian. The dogs would patrol the perimeter, circling with silent steps. Roman sentries trusted their four-legged comrades more than their fellow soldiers. A human might nod off. A dog never would. If an intruder dared cross the boundary, the growl came first. Deep, warning, unmistakable. The next sound would be a scream. The system worked. In the long campaigns of Hispania and Germania, these dogs prevented countless ambushes. They were the legion's eyes in the dark. The Romans were not sentimental, but they respected service. A war dog that survived multiple campaigns earned a kind of rough honor. Some were retired to farms or estates, living out their days guarding livestock. Archaeologists have found funerary stelae showing mastiff-like dogs reclining beside swords, silent tributes to beasts who had served Rome as faithfully as any soldier. The inscriptions often note loyalty and strength, virtues prized by the Republic and Empire alike. In a society built on hierarchy and discipline, these animals embodied Roman ideals: strength under control, courage and duty, loyalty to the state. The Canis pugnax vanished with the fall of Rome, but its descendants lived on. Through centuries of breeding, its bloodline helped shape modern mastiffs and other large working breeds. The courage and power the Romans bred for war found new purpose in peace: guarding homes, herding livestock, protecting families. And when you see a mastiff today, massive, calm, watchful, you're looking at a living echo of those bronze-armored beasts who once stormed through the smoke of battle. Their eyes may be gentler now, but somewhere deep in their instincts, the old discipline remains. Because before the Empire ruled the world, it had to rule chaos. And to tame that chaos, Rome forged a weapon that breathed, panted, and obeyed. A weapon that ran on muscle, loyalty, and fire. So next time a mastiff lumbers across a park, shoulders like boulders and eyes like molten bronze, pause for a moment. Picture it 2,000 years ago. Armor clinking, nostrils flaring, charging through the dust toward an enemy line. Behind it, the eagle standard rises, and the chorus of war dogs becomes the opening note of Rome's victory roar.